The 1970s to the 1990s, a golden era of explosive music, blazing stage lights, and voices that made the whole world fall in love. But behind that dazzling spotlight were secrets that no one dared to name for decades. The true sexuality of the singers you once idolized. In a time when being gay was seen as a sin, these heartthrobs had to fight not just to sing, but to live as their true selves. They were captivating, they were talented, but many had to love in the shadows, dream in silence, and fear losing everything, just because of 3 simple words: I am gay. And now, after all these years, we lift the veil of time to revisit 60 faces that once melted hearts, and discover where they're today. Who will surprise you the most with how much they've changed? Subscribe now, because the story of number 7 will keep your eyes glued to the screen. Tight pants, bare chest, and a masculine mustache, but he moved with the elegance and provocation of a ballerina. Freddie Mercury was the first gay man archetype who made the whole world rise and applaud. He didn't just sing, he captivated both men and women with a gender-defying aura. After his death from AIDS, the truth about his love life emerged: wild parties, a quiet romance with Jim Hutton, and deep loneliness in his final days. Voluminous hair, lazy eyes, and that iconic smirk, George was every girl's dream bad boy. But the polished look, those earrings, and fluid moves made people pause. After being arrested in a public restroom in 1998, George came out as gay. His career slowly faded into shadows, tangled with anonymous lovers and lonely nights behind the wheel. Long robes, turbans, dramatic makeup, and a gaze soft as a girl's, but his voice growled with desire. Boy George was captivating not because he was beautiful, but because he dared to be beautiful in a way men weren't allowed to be. He survived scandals, addiction, and international bans. He never hid, never apologized. "I'm a rebel with a heart," he declared. Shimmering gowns, falsetto that kissed the sky, and disco lights dancing on his radiant brown skin. Sylvester entered the club like a goddess, but was the realest man in the room. He was a gay icon before the LGBTQ acronym even existed. He died at 41 from AIDS, buried in his favorite drag outfit. His will requested a joyful funeral, because to him, living truthfully was its own eternal happiness. When the world didn't even know what drag queen meant, RuPaul strode in on 6-inch heels, fluttery lashes, and a perfectly fake bust. That unreal beauty was somehow magnetic. From unknown queen to TV millionaire, RuPaul faced criticism for commercializing the community, but no one dared do it before him. If allure is power, RuPaul turned it into an empire. Quiet eyes, tousled hair, and a coat too big for his frame, Michael wasn't flashy. But the men who liked him often didn't know why. They just wanted to sit next to him a little longer. After years of dodging labels, Michael came out as gay. He never fought for attention, he simply kept writing music for those who love, hurt, and are still learning how to be real. Leather jackets, combat boots, and metal that shook stadiums, Rob embodied extreme masculinity. Then came the truth that silenced the metal scene: he was gay, and always had been. When he came out in 1998, nothing changed. He still walked on stage like a warrior. Subtle makeup, high cheekbones, and a voice that sounded freshly broken by love. Mark sang like he just left a lover's bed, longing and bruised. After a drug overdose and HIV rumors, he faded from the spotlight. But every time he returns to the stage, his voice still makes people want to fall in love, even knowing it'll end in pain. Compact build, wide smile, and innocent dance moves like a child who knows he's cute. Andy made synthpop sexy. As one of the first artists to publicly announce his HIV status, he kept singing, loving, and inspiring. White as porcelain, wearing pyramid-like suits, with eyes that seemed void of emotion, Klaus first terrified, then enchanted. He died of AIDS at just 39. Becoming a symbol of beauty so strange it never needed explanation. He once said, "I'm not like anyone, and that's why I exist." With a shaved red head and petite frame, Jimmy Somerville possessed a falsetto that sounded angelic. Today at 63, he remains a symbol of sex appeal without muscles. As an openly gay man from the very beginning, Jimmy didn't put on a show, he simply stood there and sang, as if speaking for a generation forced to live in hiding. Throughout the 70s and 80s, Elton John defined the term wild gentleman, blonde hair, flashy glasses, glittering robes, and a bold, flamboyant presence. At 77, he remains a style icon. Married to David Furnish and a fierce philanthropist for the HIV community, Elton has overcome addiction and mental health battles to become one of the most successful openly gay artists in history. Tall, sun-kissed skin, a chiseled face, and a commanding energy, Tom Robinson was the first openly gay rock star in the UK. Now 74, he still carries that raw, rugged charm. He's lived a quiet life while continuing to advocate for LGBTQ+ rights since the 1970s. Tall and elegant with glistening brown skin, David's voice could crack the sky with emotional highs. At 57, he remains one of the few openly gay black artists with a timeless charm, equal parts classic sophistication and sensual mystery. Blonde, blue-eyed, and softly androgynous, Patrick Jouvet was the disco god of France. After his passing in Barcelona, stories resurfaced about his battles with depression and fading fame. But that gaze, that voice, and his fearless honesty in a golden disco era continued to shine, like mirrored balls still spinning in his name. A classic Parisian heartthrob, boyish face, tousled hair, and a velvety voice. Etienne didn't need to flaunt anything, his presence alone was magnetic. At 68, he still looks as refined as ever. Though never fully public about his sexuality, he never hid either, choosing a quiet, dignified life instead. Sharp cheekbones, an enigmatic smile, and that refined French gentleman aura, Alain Chamfort wasn't hot in a loud way, but in a way that drew you in with elegance. Now 75, he remains the embodiment of understated class. Though he's never spoken publicly about his sexuality, his songs often hint at a kind of love that doesn't draw boundaries. With long hair, a mischievous grin, and playful eyes, Jean-Luc was France's charming bad boy of the 1980s. Now 71, his youthful image still lingers in pop culture as the cheeky heartthrob of the chanson française era. Slick hair, colorful suits, cheeky moves, and a sparkling smile, Peter Allen wasn't conventionally handsome, but he had the charisma of a Broadway star who knew how to flirt with the whole room. He died of AIDS at 48, but left behind a legacy of joy and the bravery to openly love another man in the middle of the 1980s. Chiseled features, a scorching body, seductive dance moves, and the hit, "Boom Boom, Let's Go Back to My Room," that made waves worldwide. Paul was the poster boy of gay sex appeal before anyone dared say it out loud. Now 58, Paul is openly gay and living with HIV. He's spoken openly about his wild past, parties, addiction, and instability, but today, he's sober, strong, and still proud of the song that once got banned from airwaves. With his golden hair, piercing blue eyes, and picture-perfect masculinity, Tab Hunter was the ultimate, all-American boy, from the 50s through the 70s. Back then, no one could have guessed the heartthrob being paired with every Hollywood starlet was hiding a huge secret. After decades of silence, Tab came out as gay in his 60s, proudly introducing his longtime partner, film producer Alan Glazer. Petite frame, deep dark eyes, and a pop ballad voice that stirs emotions, Anthony Callia was Australia's ideal man after Australian Idol. Sexy, yet safe, and loved by everyone. Now 41, Anthony lives happily with his husband, actor Tim Campbell. Soft-spoken, introspective, with the look of a mysterious loner, Frank Ocean shook the R&B world in the early 2000s. As one of the first black artists to come out in the hip-hop scene, something once thought impossible, Frank now lives privately. He rarely releases music, but when he does, the world listens. Heavy eyeliner, platinum beehive, and a sultry, raspy voice, Dusty Springfield was both a symbol of femininity and a queer icon from the 60s to the 80s. She admitted her attraction to women, though she often had to remain discreet. Passing at 59, Dusty is still remembered in the LGBTQ+ community as a trailblazer for being true to herself in difficult times. Hits like Son of a Preacher Man still echo like whispered rebellion. Dapper, timeless, and straight out of a 1950s Broadway dream, Michael Feinstein is known as the keeper of the Gershwin flame. With his classic gentleman charm and soulful gaze, he brings old-school elegance back to the stage. At 67, he continues to perform and lives with his husband, music producer Terence Flannery. The ultimate French bad boy, singer, songwriter, actor, and director, Serge Gainsbourg openly identified as bisexual in a conservative Parisian era. When he passed at 62, he left behind a massive artistic legacy and a persona no one has ever quite replicated. Rugged, scruffy, and provocatively charming, he was the man everyone wanted to understand but never truly could. With a baby face, gentle smile, round eyes, and soft vocals, Stephen Gately was Boyzone's Irish angel. He captured hearts effortlessly, never trying to be more masculine than he was. His sudden passing at 33 due to a heart defect left a lasting void in fans' hearts. Sharp features, lean build, intelligent eyes, and a polished look, Neil Tennant was the type who intrigued you at first glance. His intellectual aura and cool British charm set him apart in the synthpop world. Now 69, he still tours with Chris Lowe, remaining private but never hiding who he is. Toned physique, radiant smile, and explosive stage energy, Jake Shears is the personification of queer flamboyance. He sings, he screams, he dances, and he flaunts. To Jake, queerness isn't just identity, it's sexy. At 45, he's still performing with fiery charisma, having released solo albums and even a book. Though not a traditional pop star, Russell Tovey has a beautiful voice and has performed in musicals and stage shows. With his distinctively British features, pointy ears, square jaw, and thoughtful eyes, he radiates quiet confidence. At 42, he remains one of the UK's most beloved openly gay actors. When Steve Grand burst onto the scene with his All-American Boy music video, the internet exploded. Perfect body, classic American good looks, and a heartfelt ballad energy that spoke directly to the soul. Now 34, Steve remains a symbol of a younger queer generation, fit, open, and fully himself. He continues to release music independently and regularly shares uplifting LGBTQ+ content on social media. With his mischievous grin and radio bad boy charm, Kenny Everett was both a TV comedian and a singer with irresistible wit. He didn't fit the usual hot guy mold, but there was something magnetic about his humor. He died of AIDS at 50, having come out just a few years before. To this day, he's remembered in British pop culture as a man who dared to live truthfully. Master of synthpop, icy gaze, few words, and an ever-mysterious vibe, Vince Clarke didn't speak publicly about his sexuality like his Erasure bandmate Andy Bell, but still drew queer audiences in with his powerful silence. Now 63, Vince is still making electronic music, known for his low-key lifestyle and immaculately clean public image. Petite frame, genderless high-voiced, Jimmy Scott was a rare icon, sensual and surreal all at once. Born with Kallman syndrome, which prevented puberty, Jimmy possessed a voice and appearance unlike anyone else. Though never openly queer, he remains a powerful LGBTQ+ symbol in jazz and soul simply for being unapologetically unique. He passed away at 88. Rolled up sleeves, hard hat, bright smile, David Hodo was dubbed the hottest member of the Village People by many fans. His appeal came from the contrast, construction worker physique paired with a strikingly cinematic look. Now 77, David lives a quiet life. Though never publicly out, he's still remembered by the LGBTQ+ community as disco's most charming working man. Cowboy hat, curly hair, flirtatious grin, Randy Jones was the kind of cowboy everyone wanted to ride into the sunset with. Known for his sexy swagger, he was the first Village People member to come out as gay. At 71, he still performs, still rocks the cowboy look, and continues to appear in global pride campaigns. Ripped muscles, tribal costume, wild eyes, Felipe Rose radiated primal sexuality. Fierce and enigmatic, he made you wonder and stare. Now 70, Felipe is a proud advocate for both indigenous and LGBTQ+ rights and remains an iconic figure in queer disco history. Leather jacket, black shades, biker cap, Glenn Hughes looked like he walked out of a queer fantasy in the 1970s. His muscular frame and devil-may-care attitude made him the first leather gay icon to hit MTV. He passed away from cancer at age 50, but Glenn remains legendary, not just for his music, but for living unapologetically. Chiseled body, blue eyes, voluminous hair, Al Corley stepped into Dynasty like a modern-day Prince Charming. He played Stephen Carrington, one of the first openly gay characters on American TV, and released synth-pop music that charted in Europe. Now 68, Al lives quietly, but his youthful image still appears in 80s Heartthrob retrospectives. Noble features, sly smile, deep British voice, and an icy screen presence, Rupert Everett is the kind of man you want to kiss, but might be too intimidated to approach. One of the earliest openly gay actors in Hollywood, Rupert, now 64, still acts, writes, and directs. He once lost roles because of his honesty, but says he has no regrets. That deep baritone, rich like red wine. When Spandau Ballet took over the charts with True, Tony Hadley stood tall, with a serious gaze that made you want to lean in and just listen. At 64, he remains the classic British gentleman, calm, mature, and unexpectedly sexy. Though he's straight, Tony is adored by the queer community for his voice, and for being one of the ultimate 80s gay crushes. The baby of the Bee Gees, soft curls, angelic face, and a smile that melted both hearts and posters on bedroom walls. Andy didn't need to be sexy, just appearing was enough to make hearts skip a beat. He passed away at only 30 due to heart failure worsened by addiction, becoming a symbol of fleeting youth. Though he never came out, his gentle charm made him an eternal queer icon, the ultimate soft boy that never fades. Wild curls, pouty lips, sharp eyes, and a voice that growled and seduced in equal parts, Pete looked like he came from a world beyond gender. His hit, You Spin Me Round, didn't just spin records, it spun minds. Though controversial for extreme plastic surgery and bold opinions, Pete remains a fearless queer icon, unafraid of being too much in a world that demanded less. A round face, confident eyes, and an aura that screamed, "Yes, I know I'm sexy." Holly Johnson-led Frankie Goes to Hollywood with unapologetic flair. When Relax shocked the world, Holly stood tall as one of the first openly gay pop stars during an unforgiving time. At 64, he's a writer, visual artist, an LGBTQ+ advocate. Even when record labels tried to silence him, Holly never regretted being true. Heterochromia eyes, lightning bolt makeup, fiery red hair, David Bowie didn't just charm, he redefined what charm even meant. He once called himself bisexual, though never fully confirmed it, but his presence alone became a beacon for queer folks who needed someone to say, "You're not alone." Eyeliner, falsetto, a petite frame that took over massive stages. Prince was the most seductive enigma of the 80s. He never publicly identified as gay, but wore bodysuits, strutted in heels, and sang like every word was a kiss. Prince died at 57, leaving a legacy larger than life. To the LGBTQ+ community, he was a queer icon not because he said it, but because he lived it. Long hair, slender frame, and a stage presence like an angel who crash-landed in glam rock. He was America's first openly gay rock star, before the world was ready. Forgotten in his lifetime, then rediscovered as a legend. Died of AIDS at 36, now remembered as the Freddie Mercury that came too soon. Faded red hair, quiet face, a sadness in his eyes. Steve wasn't conventionally hot, but his voice made you stop and feel. As co-founder of Bronski Beat, he gave synthpop a soul for those who hadn't yet found their own voice. Steve died in a house fire, leaving the world just as softly as he lived. Chubby cheeks, bright eyes, and a voice as soft as a pillow, Dan was the man behind I Can Dream About You, a ballad that made you feel held, even if just in a dream. Though he never came out publicly, his songs carried a gentleness that felt like they were written for someone of the same gender. Dan died of AIDS at 43. It wasn't until after his passing that the world learned he was gay. An afro halo, a sunshine smile, and piano fingers blessed by the gods. Billy Preston was the first openly gay black musician to collaborate with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Though he never came out publicly, his warmth and spirit resonated with a queer kind of joy. He died at 59, after a turbulent life, remembered now as a silent pioneer for queer people of color in music. Tall hair, tight pants, fiery moves, and that iconic, woo. Little Richard was the first true queer spirit of rock and roll. At a time when just wearing lipstick could get you banned from TV, he wore eyeliner, velvet, and sang about love like no one else dared. He passed away at 87, leaving a legendary legacy, but also controversy, having later denounced his sexuality after turning to religion. A towering drag queen with hypnotic eyes and hard-hitting house music, Kevin brought queer nightlife into pop culture, one fierce catwalk and bass drop at a time. Now 55, he remains a pride icon and even lent his voice to Beyoncé's Renaissance album, proving that true style never fades. A perfect face, bright blonde hair, toned body, and a gaze that melted hearts across 1970s France. Though publicly known for his relationships with women, his private life was full of mystery. He died in a tragic accident at 39. Some sources claim Claude had secret same-sex relationships, adding to the myth of a pop idol we never fully understood. Curly hair, poetic face, soulful eyes, and a deep, warm French voice, Julien captivates not by loudness, but by quiet magic. At 76, he's still the kind of gentleman who melts hearts, no matter who you are. He's never defined his sexuality, but his emotional openness has always resonated deeply with queer audiences. A fit body, soft eyes, and a mouth always on the edge of revealing emotion, Pascal is the definition of silent heat. At 59, he still tours and writes music with that same understated charm. Though straight, his empathy for the LGBTQ+ community, and his legions of queer fans, make him a gay icon without needing to be gay. Tanned skin, built body, and that signature steamy disco vibe, Paul Parker lit up gay clubs in the 80s with Right on Target. His body wasn't just hot, it was built to sweat and leather. At 72, Paul still performs. Openly gay from the start, he doesn't say much, but every time he steps on stage, he reminds people why disco was always about freedom. More than a musician, Bowie was the mirror of fluidity, gender, music, fashion, identity. Every appearance was a lesson. Don't choose, own it all. Though he passed at 69, Bowie remains a limitless queer icon, eternal. The master of electronic music, with a gaze sharp as a laser. While not queer himself, Jar built a huge LGBTQ+ following with his intellect meets aesthetic energy, genderless, futuristic, magnetic. At 75, he's still on stage, pushing boundaries and proving that some artists aren't ahead of their time, they are their own era. A body sculpted like a god, long curls, full lips, and a stare that burned through the lens. Michael Hutchence wasn't just sexy, he was dangerously sexy. He once admitted to same-sex experiences, never fitting into any box. He died at 37. But left behind a legacy of queer sensuality where gender had no borders. Sweet face, soaring voice, and lyrics that felt like your first crush whispering back. Darren was the new kind of romantic gay icon. Not rebellious, not defiant, just loving, deeply and truly. After years of silence, he came out, divorced his husband of 17 years, and returned to music with intimate new songs. At 52, Darren is still a symbol of gentle strength, and living your truth, quietly and beautifully. 60 faces, 60 journeys, these were not just singers, but silent warriors of freedom. They lived, they loved, they sang with hearts that never bowed to prejudice. Even when it cost them fame, careers, or their private lives, they chose to stand on stage, not just to perform, but to declare, I have the right to exist, and I deserve to be loved. Today, we look back not to feel pity, but to feel gratitude. Gratitude for those who lit the path and sparked hope for countless generations to come. They were captivating not only for their looks, but for their spirit, their courage to be themselves in a world that didn't allow it. If you've ever been touched by their music, moved by their eyes, their voices, their smiles, then today, let your heart hold space for them. Because there is nothing more powerful, more beautiful, more seductive than someone who dares to live their truth, no matter how cruel the world outside may be.